Moon Knight is Marvel's darkest property yet, and it's not just because of the spooky imagery, it's because it deals with demon possession as well as multiple personality disorder.
Spirit Life!
Hey, I'm Bruce Wham on Spirit Life, your Christian movie reviewer. The movies I review aren't Christian, but I'm a Christian and I want to bring that perspective to Moon Knight Episode 1. We begin the show with the character Stephen Grant, played by Oscar Isaac. Great performance, by the way. I enjoyed his portrayal. He's a very likable but dorky and kind of nerdy gift shop employee at a museum of ancient Egypt. We see right out the gate that he's dealing with some mental health issues. He's locking himself in his room because he doesn't know if the experiences he halfway remembers are dreams or if he's actually going out and doing certain things. He realizes he's been having conversations with people that he doesn't remember, and he oftentimes finds himself in a place where he didn't recall how he got there. Now, in real life, if you're experiencing some sort of memory lapse, and it's not just because you got drunk or something crazy, this is not just a sign of mental health. It could actually be a sign of some really big spiritual problems. Oftentimes, people who get involved with the occult find themselves blacking out or missing time. And during those times, they have been possessed by a demon and done things they, if they remembered, would really, really regret. Now, I don't know that the show is trying to have that background behind them. I think they're just trying to use a Hollywood trope. When you look at films like Split, or especially Fight Club, it's a really fun plot device when the main character doesn't know what's going on and you're trying to figure out the mystery along with them. And especially when they have multiple personalities. You've got the mild-mannered one, then you've got the superhero one. It's a common plot device, but I don't think that it's using the sensitivity that the show needs to portray when it comes to actual mental health. Dissociative Identity Disorder is an actual mental health problem. People deal with it because in their childhood especially, or at other points in their life, they may have experienced some sort of trauma. And their mind makes an alter ego to deal with that trauma. In other words, if they've experienced some sort of tremendous abuse, then their mind splinters off and tries to compartmentalize that portion of their life and that segment of their memories so that the rest of their mind can have a normal life, and it's a way for them to deal with their problem. I'm going to be really interested to find out if Moon Knight will eventually reveal that Oscar Isaac's character had dealt with some abuse in a younger age, or if they're just going to write it off as some sort of mental disorder, or if they're going to account for that by him being possessed by Khonshu, which is an Egyptian deity. What's interesting is it seems like Oscar Isaac has an alter ego, Marc Spector, who is aware of the other personality and also happens to be an avatar for this Egyptian god. Now listen, in real life, whenever you hear about ancient gods, whether it's the Greek or Roman gods or ancient Mesopotamian gods or whatever, those gods were demons that people worshipped as gods, but were just demons in real life. I talked about this a little bit with the Loki review that I was doing, because in real life there is a demon that some people have called Loki. We don't know what his real name is, but there's an actual demon out there that people worshipped wrongfully and deified and made stories about, and that's the same thing that happened with ancient Egypt. There were actual demons that people worshipped, and they ought not to have done that, and they were mistaken, giving these demons different attributes or different backstories, fabricating oral history around them. But at the end of the day, they're just demons. There are such things as spiritual entities out there. But if it's not an angel who's serving God directly, and you can tell because they give a very specific message or do a very specific action to help protect somebody or whatever, then it's probably a demon. There's really not a lot of room in between for anything else. And so the show is obviously going to dive into the demonic realm. If that bothers you as a Christian, I would say just don't watch the show. You're not missing much. Honestly, these days, you're not missing a lot if you choose not to entertain yourself and to spend that time reading the Bible or praying instead. But I will say that the show doesn't believe that these things are demons. The Marvel Comics that created Moon Knight doesn't believe that these Egyptian gods are demons. They're making them out to be some sort of sci-fi character. They're from another dimension. There may be some sort of a demigod or something. But at the end of the day, we know that these things are not real, and we don't need to give them homage. That's the thing that bugs me about superhero movies that use the supernatural in that way, is because it makes it cool. It makes you desire to have this interaction with the supernatural in a way that God does not desire. We're supposed to get our power, and there is real spiritual power to be had from the Lord. There are people who do miracles, and we see people get healed miraculously, give prophetic words. They have knowledge that they normally would not be able to ascertain, but God gives them a word of knowledge or a word of prophecy. There's real spiritual power, and miracles actually do happen, but it's only done through the power of Jesus, and anything else that seems to be power that's coming from some spiritual source is demonic, and it's a counterfeit to the real deal. If you accept that these are just sci-fi elements and the characters like Osiris or Khonshu are just extra dimensional beings from another plane or something, then I guess you could enjoy the show and not think about it too deeply on a spiritual level. But the show wants you to think that there's spiritual things happening. At one point, Stephen Grant is researching the Ennead. This is the supposed group of 9 Egyptian gods, and that's definitely going to play a part in the rest of the story. Ethan Hawke's character, who's playing the villain, is probably an avatar for one of the other Egyptian gods, and they're going to have a conflict because the two avatars are going to be a mirror of one another. This happens in Marvel movies all the time. You've got the superpowered individual who faces off against the superpowered villain who has the same set of skills or the same superpower or the same power suit, and it's a little bit of an old trope. Like I've said before, I like to spend a little less time on whether or not a Christian should watch something and more time discussing the themes behind it, but the show is a little bit spooky, and I would say that a younger audience might want to steer clear. You might not want to show this to your kids because there's some creepy stuff going on when these Egyptian gods or monsters or demons or whatever are haunting Oscar Isaac's character. One thing that I did think was interesting, and we'll have to follow this in a future episode, but Ethan Hawke's character says that we want to make this earth as much like heaven as possible. Now, he's the villain, so coming from his mouth, I don't know that we can trust his motives, and I don't know that he's actually trying to bring the biblical definition of heaven to earth. But that is a Christian concept. Actually, God wants us to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. Now, it won't fully manifest until Jesus returns. In many ways, the earth is going to get worse and worse. But we Christians do have the ability to bring the gospel, to bring hope, to bring joy and peace, and to bring healing to people's hearts. We can bring a flavor of heaven, the taste of heaven, to earth right here, right now. We don't have to wait till you die and go to heaven to bring a taste of what God wants to do in the age to come. Jesus prayed, or he taught us to pray, "Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So we're supposed to bring the gospel. We're supposed to bring life and life abundant to those around us. And so I thought it was interesting that that came from the mouth of the villain, and we're going to see whether or not he's trying to bring a counterfeit or an artificial taste of heaven, or if his definition of heaven is something to do with the Egyptian gods. I want to end by revisiting the Dissociative Identity Disorder one more time, because you need to be aware, and I don't have time to go really in depth on this, but you need to be aware that there have been groups throughout history who have intentionally abused victims to try to produce an alter ego in the victim. This has been done by scientists in the case of the US military and MK Ultra to try to mind control people. It's also been done by human traffickers who try to abuse victims and split off their abuse into an alter ego as a sex slave, so that the regular person, the other personality in other words, doesn't remember the abuse they've encountered. Needless to say, this is a horror that's really unspeakable. I can barely broach this issue in a video like this. It may be something that we do a deeper dive on in the future on this show, but Moon Knight is addressing these kind of things without the proper background. They're diving into this dissociative identity disorder without the proper respect for the fact that this actually happens to people, and sometimes it's done intentionally as a really severe form of abuse. And Oscar Isaac's character isn't getting counseling. He's not taking medication. He's totally isolated. It's a really unhealthy picture of someone who's dealing with a mental health issue. I would love to see in a major media presentation, whether it's a show or a movie, a character who has some mental health issues but deals with it appropriately through counseling, through a support group, through prayer. I'd love to see a Christian perspective on that too. but this show doesn't seem like it's going to go there. My concern is that it almost makes Stephen Grant's alter ego, Marc Spector, this really cool guy. He's a fighter, he can do anything, he understands how to get possessed by his avatar and kick butt, and it almost makes it something to be desired. The show almost promotes this idea like it's really cool if you have an alter ego superhero and you may not even know about it. I feel like that's a dangerous precedent through the mental health lens. At the end of the day, I feel like I am being a little bit picky, but for good reason, and it's going to take another episode or two before I can really give a full evaluation, so stick with me next episode, next week, and subscribe to Spirit Life if you're not already. I love discussion. When I did the Loki series, we had a lot of really good discussion in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you thought I was wildly off base, or if you thought my analysis was just total trash. You can let me know that. I'm open to discussion and debate. I'd like to know your thoughts. If you've struggled with mental health, I know that's a sensitive thing and may take some vulnerability to share, but I would be honored if you want to share some of your experience, or if you've had experience with exorcism and with casting out demons like I have. I'd love to hear some of your experience about that and how it overlaps with multiple personalities and alter egos down in the comments below. This is Bruce on Spirit Life.